Okay, it looks like the group is slowly winding down. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Caitlin Justice, and I am with DCEO's Office of Accountability. Today we are discussing risk assessments, which is part of our revolving topic series. So each month we have a training on a revolving topic. So this month, we will be focusing on risk assessments. So as you join this webinar today, you might have heard that it is being recorded. So we will be sending out that recording and the slides later on this afternoon. So just wanted to put that out there in case you have to take off early or you'd like to go back and refer to this presentation that will be sent out later on this afternoon for all the participants. So again, with that being said, welcome, and we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so today we're going to introduce the topic of risk assessments. We're going to discuss why the state of Illinois requires risk assessments and what their purpose is. We're going to cover two types of risk assessments today. The first being the Fiscal and Administrative Risk Internal Controls Questionnaire. Yes, quite the mouthful. We also refer to that as the ICQ. And then we're going to discuss the programmatic risk assessment, which we call for short the PRA. There may be some program offices here at DCEO that utilize additional risk assessments just based on their program needs, but today we're going to be focusing on the ICQ and the PRA. So after we cover what those two risk assessments are, we're going to learn more about specific conditions which originate from those two completed grant risk assessments. We're going to wrap up the presentation by sharing some updates, tips, reminders, and some resources. And then at the end, I will do a screen share where I will walk you through where to find the ICQ in the GATA grantee portal. So we will have some time to go over that so I can walk you through. We also will have time at the end for any questions. We are monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions as we're going through the presentation, feel free to post those questions in the chat. But we'll have some time at the end to go through those. And we'll also utilize, if you want to use the raise hand icon at the end, and we can unmute you if you'd rather verbalize your question too. So we will have some time at the end for that. It's a shorter presentation today, but I hope it is very important to the grant process. So we will go ahead and get started for that. And I do see some more people coming in. So just to let you know that the presentation is being recorded and you will be receiving the slides in the recording later this afternoon. So what is a risk assessment? Risk assessments help us to ascertain the organization's processes in an effort to identify any potential weaknesses. So the greater the weaknesses of an organization's management, the greater potential for waste, fraud, and potential abuse. So grantees must complete risk assessments to establish the level of risk their entity poses. Typically, the format of a risk assessment is a series of uniform questions that identifies an entity's processes to identify any potential weaknesses out there. And risk assessments are a part of the pre-award process, which means they are conducted prior to being issued a notice of state award, which we also call a NOSA. So why are risk assessments important? Risk assessments are required by the 2 CFR 200.206, which dictates that agencies must establish and maintain policies and procedures for conducting risk assessments to evaluate the risk posed by applicants before issuing any grant awards. So when that risk assessment is completed, a grant manager can review the assessment to identify any areas where the grantee may need additional support on, which allows the grant manager to be proactive in helping solve any concerns before it can become an issue. So risk assessments help to protect taxpayer funds by verifying grantee weaknesses. So if a grantee is deemed high risk, we must ensure that the agency here at DCEO has established specific conditions to ensure that there will be good financial and programmatic outcomes. So I'll go a little bit more into specific conditions later in this presentation. Um, risk assessments are also designed as a compass just to safeguard the grantee and the grantor if any risks need to be further documented, whether that be in the grant agreement or even to inform monitoring of the grant. So first up, the first risk assessment we're going to introduce is the Financial and Risk Assessment Internal Control Questionnaire, or the ICQ. So grantees will use the GATA grantee portal to complete their ICQ. This assessment is to be completed once per state fiscal year, which the state fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30th. So as of today, we actually have 2 ICQs available to complete in the GATA grantee portal. The current fiscal year is FY25, so that if you have not completed that ICQ yet, that's available. And then at the beginning of March, they also released the FY26 ICQ. So if you've been in there and you've seen the FY26 ICQ, you can go ahead and work to complete that. If you haven't completed either of those, they're both in there and available for you to complete today. It's also important to note that the questions in the risk assessments are not punitive, but they do help the CEO to see who might need additional technical assistance to ensure that the grant is carried out successfully. So what type of questions are included in an ICQ? Questions consist of items relating to your entity's accounting system, your operational policies and procedures, and personnel. So the ICQ is measuring the specific capabilities of the entity to meet benchmark standards. So when you're answering your questions on the risk assessment, we just need to note that we cannot provide any answers for you. So if you have a question on how to answer something, we can only provide clarification of what the question is asking. So grantees are expected to answer the questions to the best of your own knowledge about your entity. And then whoever's completing the ICQ, it's typically either your CFO or equivalent, but you may need to consult with your operational leadership team just to make sure that you are accurately answering the questions. And also while you're completing it, it's based on your current operating procedures, not what you hope to implement at some point. And then the number of questions in the internal control questionnaire is dependent upon the answers provided by the entity. So at most, there are 48 questions in the ICQ. So I'm going to briefly share via some slides on how to find that ICQ in the GATA grantee portal. So on this slide, you can see this is the landing page for the GATA grantee portal. You are going to click that grantee portal sign in that I have highlighted in red on the slide. The login information is the information that you created when you registered in the portal. So it's that public account information. And if you see this screen and you're not familiar with the GATA grantee portal or you're not registered, that's okay. We have a great new user guide that will help you walk you through the steps to get registered in the GATA grantee portal. So I think Robin will get those into the chat for you. So you'll have the link to the portal and a link to the new user guide. So once you've entered your login information, a screen will come up and you'll be able to scroll through the different sections of your GATA page. There is a section that's called the Fiscal and Administrative Internal Controls Questionnaire, ICQ. It's all spelled out right there for you. And if there is an ICQ that's available to complete, you can click on the View button next to that fiscal year that's available. So on this slide, you can see this is one of our example accounts. We haven't done the 2026 risk assessment yet. So if I wanted to go in there today and complete that, I'd just click on that View button right next to the 2026 in that first row. So once you've selected the fiscal year in which you'd like to submit an ICQ for, the ICQ will open and you can begin answering the questions. So those category of questions that are include quality of management system, financial and programmatic reporting, ability to effectively implement requirements, and audit. So once you've been in there and completed all of the questions and submit the ICQ, an automation will score the questionnaire and assign suggested specific conditions in response to that risk profile. So I also want to point out at the bottom on this slide where it says ICQ assistance, if you have any technical issues or questions, your cognizant agency contact email will be listed. So in this example on the slide, DCEO is the cognizant agency for this registration. So it lists our grant help desk email. So if you are trying to complete the ICQ or if you have any questions, that's the email and the contact that you would reach out to. I'll go a little bit more into detail on that next slide. So once you have the ICQ submitted in the portal, your cognizant agency, which I refer to as that state agency you've elected or you've been assigned to, they will review your answers to the ICQ. So if the review finds any discrepancies or they need further clarification, that cognizant agency contact will reach out to you directly for further details. So just to let you know, that does happen once some of our program offices are reviewing and say, hey, we have worked with this grantee before and we had these issues, but they answered that they've never had these type of issues before. So it's just a conversation between that COG agency contact and the grantee just to understand the process of that ICQ. There is the functionality to return an ICQ as well. So say you may have completed it and say, hey, I didn't really answer that question right. I may need to look into that. You can reach out to your cognizant agency and they can begin that discussion if it should be returned to you for completion. So again, if you are unsure of what agency is your cognizant agency, you can find that information in the GATA grantee portal as well. So on this slide, once you enter the GATA grantee portal, you'll see your organization name and your GATA ID. So right directly underneath that, it'll list your state cognizant agency and who to contact at that agency. So for this example, this test registrations, our cognizant agency is DCEO, and we would contact the grant help desk for any questions. So that's the ICQ. So now we are going to turn it over to the programmatic risk assessment, or the PRA. So program-specific risk assessments evaluate the entity's ability to successfully carry out the terms of a specific program. So the programmatic risk assessment, or the PRA, is a tool that grant managers complete based on the information collected from the grantee. So the grant manager completes the PRA, taking into account the grantee's organizational capacity, as well as the application documents, and they use those to assign potential risk. So the PRA helps grantees to be successful in implementing their plans. It is to be completed once per grant opportunity. So with the ICQ, you're completing that once per state fiscal year. For the PRA, you're completing it once per grant opportunity. So if you apply for multiple grants throughout the year, you'll conduct a PRA throughout all of those grants in which you are applying for or awarded. Formats of the PRA may vary from program to program. Some have implemented the questions into their program application or narrative. So once you have a grant manager assigned, they can walk you through those steps and documenting that information for you. So it's conducted after the grant program application documents have been received by DCEO. And then, like I said, your grant manager will reach out and have more information on that PRA as you work through the establishment of your grant. The PRA is used to identify potential weaknesses in grant-seeking organizations in order to better understand what controls need to be implemented to eliminate the possibility of fraud, waste, or abuse. So it helps also to determine any corrective actions, if any, are needed to remain in compliance with the grant agreement. It's not used to determine your grant award. Like the ICQ, the results are not punitive. The grant manager is using an objective approach when scoring the risk assessment, as it allows for the most reasonable, reliable, and thorough outcomes. The sections of the PRA include financial stability, management systems and standards, audit and monitor findings, ability to effectively implement requirements, key staff, capacity, external relationships, and reporting. So I mentioned briefly earlier in the slide about specific conditions. So I'll go into a little bit more about what specific conditions are. So specific conditions are additional requirements on a grantee based on their responses in the risk assessments. So specific conditions are assigned from both the ICQ and the PRA. You could have the specific conditions just from the ICQ and maybe none are assigned in the PRA. So it's just determined on the answers based on both of the risk assessments. So, and if you do complete your risk assessments, how do you know if you are assigned a specific condition? So here at DCEO, we use the Notice of State Award, or the NOSA process. It is required by the Illinois Administrative Code to notify a grantee regarding any specific conditions. So we send the NOSA through the GATA grantee portal for acceptance to your entity once we have begun the establishment of the grant, and the NOSA will lay out all, if any specific conditions are assigned. So that will be for you to review in the GATA grantee portal once that NOSA is sent. So the information that it will include will be the nature of the additional requirements, the reason why the requirements are being imposed, the action needed to remove the additional requirements if applicable, the time allowed for completing the actions if applicable, and the method for requesting reconsideration of additional requirements. And then just to let you know, they're outlined in the NOSA, but then they are also included in your eventual grant agreement as well. So the NOSA comes before the grant agreement. Specific conditions also enable the entity to develop capacity in areas of weakness and helps to reduce risk to DCEO. So if you are notified that you do have specific conditions, how do you decipher what the specific condition sections mean? So on this slide, I've kind of taken it piece by piece. And this is actually from an executed grant agreement. So I took it right from that grant agreement to show you what it looks like. So this is a specific condition that was assigned from the ICQ risk assessment. So first up in that first red box is the ICQ section. So this is what identifies which section of the ICQ where that condition stemmed from. So in this example, the specific condition is from section 04 of the ICQ, which is ability to effectively implement requirements. That next box is conditions. So the condition is the action that needs to be resolved by the grantee. So in essence, what does the grantee need to accomplish to remove the additional requirement? So in this example, the grantee will need to develop an action plan and maintain all supporting documentation for review as it relates to the specific condition. And then That next box up is risk explanation. So this is the reasoning of the additional requirements that are imposed. So based on this grantee's answers to the ICQ, we can see that there is an increased likelihood for medium to high assessed risk occurrences, which are named in the explanation, which could be maybe unallowable cost, waste, abuse, so on. The how to fix section. This is how the grantee tells the grantee what they need to fix while ultimately resolving the issue. So in this example, what the grantee can do to immediately to begin working toward resolving the issue. And then that last box is time frame. So this is the time that's allowed for the resolution to the specific condition to exist. So this has to be in effect for at least a period of 1 year before the specific condition can be considered to be removed. So you have to have your resolution in place for at least 1 year before that condition can be removed. So for the PRA, so grant managers will also review the PRA and formulate specific conditions that are responsive to the results of that assessment. So if there are specific conditions assigned from the PRA, your grant manager will follow the same format as those ICQ sections. So just like on the previous slide, it will identify the section, the condition, the risk explanation, how to fix, and the time frame. So same exact setup. So here's just an overview of the risk assessment process. So starting on the left, you have the ICQ and the PRA, which are the two risk assessments that will be completed, and how they inform with specific conditions are assigned from those two risk assessments. And then it will be identified in the NOSA, which is that Notice of State Award, which, if accepted, is then moved to the grant agreement, which is laid out. All specific conditions are included in grant agreements, and then it'll move on to the enforcement of those specific conditions. So the enforcement is the implementation of the specific conditions imposed during the review of risk assessment. So it's up to your grant manager to enforce those specific conditions as assigned and noted in your grant agreement. So for example, if the grant manager assigns, there's been a specific condition assigned and the grant manager decides, hey, I need to check in with this grantee 2 times a month and check in on their reporting and see if they, and make sure they submit a synopsis of their reporting of what they have so far. So your grant manager is in charge of requesting that information, double checking it just to make sure your grantee is staying on the path and that any issues that are potential issues that could happen don't become a bigger problem. So it's a little bit of that checks and balances as they're going through that process. And then, so we have now covered the two types of risk assessments and specific conditions which result from those risk assessments. So I just wanted to share some tips and reminders for you and a little recap. So just want you to remember that the ICQ and the PRA are pre-award requirements. So that means they have to be completed prior to receiving a NOSA, which is that Notice of State Award that comes through the GATA grantee portal. Grant managers and program staff cannot provide guidance on what to answer for entities to select on the ICQ. So we can't provide any type of answer for you. We can clarify the question, but can't provide how to answer. The ICQ and the PRA are not punitive. Just a reminder to answer the questions to the best of your ability in your current operational standards, not what you hope to have in the future. And then we are not permitted to share any type of scoring information, as that information could lead to inauthentic results. So we can't share what the scores are, but just to let you know that the answers to both risk assessments are not punitive, so they will not be held against you. just to put that out there. I think I saw that in the chat come up, but just wanted to put a reminder on that. And then before we open it up for questions, I do want to thank you again for joining us today. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope you were able to learn more about the importance of risk assessment, as it is a vital part of the grant process. Again, we did record this presentation, and the slides and recording will be sent electronically later on today. I do want to share a little bit more about our DCEO grantee resource site. This is where you can go to find DCEO's grant opportunities. You can check out future grant trainings, just like this one. We also have a video resource library that's full of short tutorial videos and resource guides. And then additionally, if you need any assistance with grants or you have any questions, you have the ability to contact our DCEO Grant Help Desk. You can either click by filling out a form, or you can send an email to our help desk. So I discussed earlier, we have a revolving topic training monthly. So I'm going to briefly give you a synopsis of what we have on the docket for next month. So for April, we have pre-qualification, which we offer every month. It happens on the first Wednesday of the month. So for April, that'll be April 2nd. And then our next revolving topic training will be April 16th. And that topic is a very popular one. It is writing a grant application. We also host weekly office hours every Tuesday from 2 to 3. There's no formal presentation in those office hours. It's just a Q&A session where potential and current grantees can hop on and ask any grant related questions to the group. So that happens weekly every Tuesday. And then, as always, any questions or comments can be sent to our DCEO Grant Help Desk, and that email is on the slide. It's also ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov. So now I'm going to stop sharing the slides really quick, and I'm going to do a screen share and walk you through the GATA grantee portal and where to find the ICQ. And then we'll have time to open up the floor for questions. I'll go through the chat. While we're doing that, if you have any questions that have come up, please type those into the chat now, or you can use the raise hand icon and we can call on you during that section. So I will stop sharing now. And let me get my GATA portal pulled up for everybody. Okay. So I'm going to go back one screen, a few screens for me. So if you remember me sharing earlier in the presentation, this is the GATA grantee portal login page. So I have my account created. So I'm going to click on the grantee portal sign in. And then this is a test account. So if you see a lot of red and yellow, that please know that it is a test account. So this is what the portal looks like when you log in. So as you can see, as I'm scrolling in, this box that's highlighted in red, if you have any outstanding things that you need to fix, they will pop up here. So those are some items that we need to call attention to. So as I scroll down, you'll see your entity's name, your GATA ID, that state cognizant agency. So that's the agency that'll be reviewing your ICQ. If you have any questions, that would be the contact that I would reach out to. And then as I scroll, you'll have your pre-qualification area. And then here is where you'll find the ICQ. So this is the Fiscal and Administrative Internal Controls Questionnaire. So as you can see, every ICQ from the fiscal year has been listed here. We completed 2025, but I have not completed 2026 yet. So if I wanted to log in today to complete that, I'd just click on this view button, and then I'd be able to begin the questions. So you can click on each section and then you'll see how many questions are over here. All right, remember I said it's up to 48 questions, so that's just dependent on your answers. So as you're going through the questions, you might notice that it's not in numerical order. Well, based on your answers, it skipped to a next question. So, but there's up to 48 questions here. So again, if you have any questions as you're going through or you're having technical difficulties, they list the contact right here as well. So you can reach out to them. So that is where you find the ICQ and the GATA grantee portal. The PRAW is not completed in the portal. That's completed by your grant manager. So that will not be in the portal. And so that's all I have for showing you that. I'm going to go back through the chat real quick and we'll see. I think Robin did a great job of putting all the resource links in and answering questions. Eric, the ICQ is not punitive, so neither risk assessment is. So Robin answered that to you. So I just wanted to put that out to the group. Oh, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It's not punitive. So not punitive. Okay, and I do have a couple of questions in here. Is there a printout of all the questions in the ICQ? No, there is not. So just how I showed you how to log in, if you click on each section, you'll be able to see. If you need to complete the ICQ with somebody, you can have that. You'll have to sit at the computer and complete them together. Let's see, is this portal different from the initial SAM.gov page? Yes. So the GATA grantee portal is a state operated portal where SAM.gov is a federal operated website. So you have to be, in order to be pre-qualified, you have to be registered in SAM.gov and registered in the GATA grantee portal. I've completed the ICQ on February 4th. It's still not accepted. How will this affect my grant application? So you can reach out to your cognizant agency, that contact, and see, you can ask why it hasn't been completed yet. It will not affect your grant application. It is a part of the pre-award process, but that is after your grant applications have been reviewed and if you've been notified that you are an awardee. So it has nothing to do with the application portion of the grant. So it only happens after that review has been conducted. So before they can send a NOSA to you to accept the award, but you can feel free to reach out to your cognizant agency and see why it is not, hasn't been accepted yet. Okay. Is it recommended that organizations model their subrecipient risk assessment off the DCEO ICQ? That would be an entity discussion with your organization. Obviously, if you completed the ICQ, you know what DCEO is assessing based on risk. So if you want to include some of those questions in there, I think that would be a great idea. I honestly, I would probably recommend that, but it's totally up to your entity on what you would like to do with your subrecipients. And please post the link to the state's website. Yeah, we'll put the GATA portal into the chat for you, so you'll have that link in there as well. I think Robin posted that up further too, so we can up in the chat. Also, if you are have not registered in the GATA portal, we also have that new user guide. Yep, Robin just threw that in there for you. So I'm assuming you haven't registered yet in the portal. So feel free to use that new user guide, and it walks you through step by step how to register. And I'm going to look through if we have any hands raised. I do not see any hands raised, but I'll wait a few minutes around if anybody has any additional questions, or you can post in the chat. But that's all we have for you today. Thanks again for joining, and be looking for an email later this afternoon with the recording and the slides. And we'll see you next month. Thanks so much, everybody. Oh, I do see a question. So if, the pre-qual training will be next month. In this regard, if ICQ is not punitive, is the pre-qualification punitive? So pre-qualification is a set of requirements that must be obtained before you can apply for a grant. So that would include registering in sam.gov, registering in the Guide Grantee portal, not be on the Illinois Stop Payment list, not be on the FENLOC list, the delinquent debt, and be registered with the in good standing with the Illinois Secretary of State. So all of those requirements from pre-qualification have to be obtained before the application deadline of the grant you're applying to. So all those have to be check marked before that application deadline. You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for attending today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.